The council chamber of the Galactic Federation stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into artificial stars that mimicked the home systems of each member species. Today, representatives from 47 civilizations had gathered for what many considered a routine territorial dispute hearing. The atmosphere buzzed with the usual mix of translated languages, pheromone communications, and electromagnetic pulses that served as speech for the silicon-based crystallites. At the center of the chamber stood Ambassador Thex-9, his crystalline, form-catching and refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns across the walls. The crystallite had requested this emergency session, though most delegates viewed his concerns as the paranoid ramblings of an outdated prophet species. The crystallites had once been revered for their ability to analyze probability matrices across vast timescales, but their influence had waned as younger, more aggressive species rose to prominence. Honored delegates, Thex-9's voice resonated through the chamber's translation matrix, creating a harmonic that made several species' sensory organs tingle uncomfortably. I have called this gathering to issue a warning about the species designated as humanity in Sector 7G. A ripple of dismissive sounds echoed through the chamber. The Zephyrians, with their flowing tentacle-like appendages, performed what their species considered a gesture of amusement. The militant Kreks, resembling armored beetles the size of shuttlecraft, clicked their mandibles in what translated as contemptuous laughter. High Counselor Vex Prime, a towering member of the dominant hegemony species, raised one of his forearms for silence. His species had ruled the Galactic Council for over 3 millennia, their advanced technology and diplomatic cunning making them natural leaders. Ambassador Thex-9, the humans are a primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel. They have managed to colonize only a handful of systems and possess technology roughly equivalent to what the Kreks possessed 5,000 years ago. What possible threat could they represent? Thex-9's crystalline structure pulsed with an inner light that indicated deep concern among his people. Counselor, you mistake technological advancement for evolutionary potential. My analysis of human, historical patterns reveals something unprecedented in galactic records. This species does not follow normal patterns of conflict resolution. Elaborate, demanded General Krexthok, the military representative whose species had conquered 47 worlds before joining the Federation. All species follow predictable patterns. Strike them hard enough and they submit or die. It is the way of the universe. The crystallite's form shifted, projecting holographic data streams into the air above him. Images of human conflicts throughout their history materialized in 3-dimensional detail. Ancient battles with primitive weapons, world wars involving millions of soldiers, and recent skirmishes in their expanding colonial territories played out in accelerated time. Observe their response patterns, Thex-9 continued. When attacked, most species either surrender, negotiate, or fight until their resources are depleted. Humans demonstrate a unique characteristic: they escalate. Each attack against them results not in submission, but in the development of more effective countermeasures and more aggressive expansion. The Aquatic Collective's representative, speaking through water-filled tubes that connected to the chamber's atmospheric processors, gurgled their skepticism. All young species show aggression. They mature beyond it or destroy themselves. These humans will either evolve past their primitive impulses or eliminate themselves through warfare. Either outcome removes them as a factor. That is where you are wrong. Thex-9's harmonic voice carried an edge that made several delegates uncomfortable. I have run probability cascades extending 10,000 years into potential futures. In 94% of scenarios where humanity faces extinction-level threats, they not only survive, but emerge stronger. More concerning, in 78% of scenarios where they are attacked by external forces, they eventually become the dominant military power in this galactic region. High Counselor Vex Prime's 4 eyes focused independently on different aspects of the holographic display. Your species' predictive abilities have been unreliable in recent centuries, Ambassador. The Great War of the Spiral Arms, the Crystallite, Rebellion, the Silicon Plague. All events your people failed to predict accurately. Thex-9's inner light flickered with what his species considered deep sadness. Our abilities have not diminished, Counselor. Our credibility has been undermined by those who prefer convenient lies to uncomfortable truths. I predicted the Zephyrian Civil War 3 centuries before it occurred. I warned of the Krex expansion beyond the neutral zone 50 years before their first illegal colony. In each case, this council chose to ignore the warnings until crisis forced action. The chamber erupted in defensive responses from the accused species. Zephyrian tentacles writhed in agitation while Krex mandibles clacked angrily. High Counselor Vex Prime restored order with a sonic pulse that resonated through the chamber's infrastructure. Even if we accept your predictions about human potential, the counselor continued, they remain a minor species with limited resources. The Terran Colonial Authority has established settlements on merely 7 worlds. Their largest military vessels are primitive fusion-powered craft that would be no match for a single hegemony destroyer. You focus on their current capabilities, rather than their adaptive patterns, Thex 9 responded, his crystalline form now pulsing with urgent red light. Humans possess something unique among known species. They treat warfare as an evolutionary pressure, rather than a necessary evil. Each conflict teaches them new methods of violence, new technologies of destruction, and new strategies for expansion. The holographic display shifted, showing human technological advancement over their brief spacefaring period. In less than 2 centuries, they had progressed from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. Their weapons technology had evolved, from simple kinetic projectiles to plasma-based systems that could crack moon-sized asteroids. Furthermore, Thex 9 continued, their expansion pattern defies conventional galactic colonization models. Instead of establishing secure trade routes between high-resource worlds, they colonize marginal planets specifically to serve as military outposts and research facilities. They are not building an empire, they are building a war machine. General Krexthok's massive form shifted forward, his species' natural aggression finally engaged. If these humans are as dangerous as you claim, perhaps we should eliminate them before they become a threat. A single strike force could sterilize their home system before they could mount a defense. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this suggestion. It would not be the first time the Federation had authorized preemptive strikes against potentially dangerous species. The silicon-based architects had been eliminated 3 millennia ago for developing self-replicating military technology. The psychic mindweavers had been quarantined on their homeworld after demonstrating the ability to control other species' thoughts. Thex 9's crystalline structure suddenly blazed with brilliant white light, a display that had not been seen from a crystallite in over 1,000 years. No, his harmonic voice carried such force that several delegates physically recoiled. You still do not understand. Striking humanity would not eliminate the threat, it would create it. The silence in the council chamber stretched for nearly a full minute, broken only by the ambient hum of life support systems cycling atmosphere for dozens of different species. High Counselor Vex Prime leaned forward in his ornate chair, carved from a single piece of quantum-locked crystal that had taken his species 3 centuries to grow. Explain this contradiction, Ambassador, the counselor demanded. How does eliminating a threat create a greater threat? Your logic appears flawed. Thex 9's brilliant white radiance gradually dimmed to a steady azure glow, indicating his species' equivalent of deep contemplation. The holographic display above him shifted again, this time showing detailed psychological profiles that the crystallites had somehow obtained from human databases. Observe their cultural mythology, the ambassador began. Every human civilization, regardless of geographic origin or technological development, shares certain recurring themes. The concept of the underdog who becomes mighty through adversity, the celebration of martyrs whose deaths inspire greater resistance, the glorification of lost causes that ultimately triumph. The display showed human stories, songs, and historical accounts. Ancient tales of small tribes defeating vast empires, recent colonial rebellions where outnumbered human forces had repelled alien raiders, and even fictional narratives where humanity stood alone against cosmic threats and prevailed through determination and sacrifice. Ambassador Flick's core of the Merchant Coalition, whose species had built their reputation on understanding customer psychology across thousands of cultures, gestured with his 6 manipulator arms. Cultural stories are entertainment, not strategic planning. No species actually behaves according to their fictional narratives. Humans do, Thex 9 replied simply. I have analyzed their response patterns to every external threat they have encountered in their short spacefaring history. 3 years ago, Zephyrian pirates attacked a human research station in the Kepler 442 system. The station was completely destroyed, all 200 researchers killed. The Zephyrian representatives' tentacles coiled in what their species considered embarrassment. That was an unauthorized action by exile groups. The collective formally apologized and offered reparations. "And how did humanity respond to your apology?" Thex 9 asked, though his tone indicated he already knew the answer. High Counselor Vex Prime accessed his species' intelligence files with a thought, his neural implants interfacing directly with the Federation's information networks. The Terran Colonial Authority launched a military expedition. They tracked the pirate fleet across 7 systems and eliminated not just the attackers, but their entire support network. Then they established 3 new military outposts along Zephyrian trade routes. Precisely, Thex 9 confirmed. A normal species would have accepted the apology, perhaps demanded additional reparations, and moved on. Humans used the attack as justification for expanding their military presence into previously neutral space. They transformed a criminal incident into territorial gain. General Krexthok's mandibles clicked with what might have been appreciation, an aggressive response to established dominance. My species approves of such tactics. But it was not a single aggressive response, the crystallite continued. 3 months later, when the fungal species known as the Mycelium Collective accidentally contaminated a human agricultural world with spores that destroyed their crops, humans responded with a research program that developed antifungal weapons capable of sterilizing entire ecosystems. When the Aquatic Collective refused to honor a trade agreement and seized human cargo vessels, humans developed underwater combat suits and established permanent military bases on oceanic worlds throughout the disputed region. The pattern was becoming clear to some of the more perceptive delegates. Each time humans encountered a problem, they did not simply solve it. They oversolved it, developing capabilities far beyond what the immediate situation required. Director Aqua 7 of the Aquatic Collective released a series of bubbles that translated as concern. "We were unaware that humans had developed underwater military technology. Our intelligence suggested they were purely surface and space dwellers. That is another critical factor," Thex 9 noted. Humans actively conceal the extent of their capabilities. Their official military reports consistently understate their technological advancement and force readiness. They allow other species to believe they are weaker than they actually are. High Counselor Vex Prime's 4 eyes focused on different sections of intelligence reports streaming across his neural interface. These reports are classified Federation intelligence. How did your species obtain them? Crystallites observe probability streams, Counselor. We do not steal information, we predict it. However, I will note that humans have been conducting their own intelligence gathering operations throughout Federation space for the past 18 months. They know far more about our military capabilities than we know about theirs. The revelation sent ripples of unease through the chamber. Several species began urgent communications with their home governments, suddenly realizing that the primitive humans might have been studying them far more carefully than anyone had suspected. Ambassador Kelp Weaver of the Plant Collective, whose species communicated through chemical signals that took several minutes to translate, finally contributed to the discussion. "Even accepting your analysis, Ambassador Thex 9, these humans remain numerically inferior. Their total population across all worlds is less than 50 billion. The Federation represents trillions of sentience across thousands of worlds. Numbers become irrelevant when warfare transcends traditional boundaries," Thex 9 responded. "Humans do not fight wars, they fight crusades. When threatened with extinction, they do not seek survival. They seek victory. I have studied their concept of total war, and it is unlike anything in galactic military doctrine." The holographic display shifted to show human military theoretical writings, strategic papers that outlined their approach to hypothetical interstellar conflicts. The documents were chilling in their thoroughness, discussing everything from economic warfare to biological weapons to psychological operations designed to break enemy morale across entire species. They have contingency plans for fighting enemies, with every type of physiology represented in this chamber, Thex 9 continued. They have studied our weaknesses, identified our critical resources, and developed strategies for achieving victory regardless of numerical disadvantage. Most disturbing, they have done this while maintaining the appearance of a peaceful, exploration-focused civilization. General Krexthok's massive form bristled with aggression. Enough speculation. If these humans are planning war against the Federation, we must strike first. Better to eliminate a potential threat than wait for it to become an actual one. And there, Thex9 said, his harmonic voice carrying a note of sadness that transcended species barriers. You have just proven my point. You think in terms of elimination, of decisive strikes, of quick victories. Humans think in terms of generations, of species survival, of wars that reshape the galaxy itself. The ambassador's crystalline form pulsed with deep red light as he accessed his most disturbing probability calculations. If you strike humanity once, Counselor, you will not destroy them. You will unite them. You will give them a common enemy, a shared purpose, and a justification for unleashing capabilities they are currently keeping hidden. They will not rest until every species that supported the attack has been either subjugated or eliminated. You ask us to believe that a species of primitives could threaten the entire Federation? High Counselor Vex Prime's skepticism was evident in the harmonics of his translated voice. I ask you to believe mathematics, Thex9 replied. I have run every scenario, calculated every probability matrix, analyzed every possible future. In the vast majority of timelines where humanity is attacked by external forces, they do not merely survive. They become the dominant species in this galaxy. They do not conquer through superior numbers or advanced technology. They win through sheer terrifying persistence. The debate continued for another 6 hours, with representatives from various species arguing about the validity of crystallite predictions and the appropriate response to the perceived human threat. As the session finally concluded, most delegates dismissed Thex9's warnings as the paranoid fantasies of a dying prophet species. The official record would show that the Council had noted the ambassador's concerns and would monitor the situation appropriately. High Counselor Vex Prime was among the last to leave the chamber, his forearms manipulating holographic displays as he reviewed intelligence reports about human activities. The data was limited. Humans maintained strict communication security and rarely allowed non-human observers into their military facilities. What information the Federation possessed came primarily from trade negotiations and diplomatic exchanges. As the Counselor walked through the corridors of the Federation's capital station, his neural implants chimed with an incoming priority communication from Hegemony Intelligence Command. The message contained surveillance footage from the human world of New Geneva, taken by long-range reconnaissance drones operating at the edge of the system. The footage showed what appeared to be a massive construction project in the asteroid belt surrounding the human colony. Hundreds of vessels moved between rocky planetoids, but the resolution was too poor to determine exactly what they were building. The Hegemony's best analysts could only confirm that the scale of the operation was far larger than anything humans had previously attempted. Meanwhile, in a secure conference room 3 sectors away, General Krexthok was conducting his own meeting with military representatives from 6 allied species. The Krex had built their reputation on decisive military action, and the general was growing impatient with what he saw as Federation bureaucracy preventing necessary action. The Crystallites' warnings actually confirm what our intelligence has suspected. General Krexthok clicked to the assembled officers. Humans are not the peaceful explorers they pretend to be. Their expansion pattern is clearly military in nature, establishing outposts in strategic locations rather than pursuing economically optimal colonization. Commander Spike 7 of the Urchin Defense Forces gestured agreement with his needle-sharp appendages. My species has observed human training exercises in the Vega system. Their tactics are unlike anything in our military databases. They seem to prioritize mobility and adaptability over traditional force concentration. What concerns me most, added Captain Voidwalker of the Shadow Fleet, is their apparent disregard for conventional military doctrine. They conduct operations that should be impossible with their stated technology levels. The general's mandibles clacked thoughtfully. Perhaps it is time to test these humans directly. A small probe, nothing that could be considered an act of war, just enough pressure to gauge their actual capabilities. Back on the human world of New Geneva, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of what the Federation would have recognized as the most advanced military facility they had ever encountered. Banks of quantum processors analyzed data streams from surveillance networks that extended throughout Federation space, while teams of analysts worked around the clock to assess potential threats. Admiral Chen had been expecting this day for months. Human intelligence operatives embedded throughout Federation space had been reporting increased attention from various species' military commands. The Crystallite ambassador's public warning in the council chamber had been monitored through carefully placed listening devices, and every word had been recorded and analyzed. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, one of Chen's senior intelligence officers, "we're detecting increased Krex military activity along our border regions. 3 task forces have repositioned to forward staging areas in the past week." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. She was a veteran of humanity's expansion period, having commanded forces during the brutal colony wars against indigenous alien species that had attacked human settlements. Unlike the sanitized reports sent to the Federation, these conflicts had been far more violent and destructive than anyone outside the human military knew. "Any word from Project Prometheus?" she asked. "The construction teams report they'll be ready for initial testing within 72 hours, Torres replied. "The first-generation units are already showing performance parameters beyond our most optimistic projections." Project Prometheus was humanity's response to the mathematical reality of interstellar warfare. Human strategists had long ago calculated that any conflict with the Federation would be a numbers game. Humanity could not win through conventional means. The solution had been to develop capabilities that transcended conventional warfare entirely. "What about the diplomatic corps?" Admiral Chen continued. "Are they still maintaining the peaceful explorer facade?" Ambassador Williams reports that Federation species continue to underestimate our capabilities by several orders of magnitude. They believe our most advanced warships are equivalent to their patrol craft from 1,000 years ago. This misconception was carefully maintained. The ships humans displayed to Federation observers were indeed primitive by galactic standards. What the aliens did not know was that these vessels were essentially training platforms, designed to familiarize human crews with space combat while concealing the existence of humanity's actual military capabilities. The real human fleet consisted of vessels built using technology that wouldn't be developed by most Federation species for centuries. Exotic matter manipulation, weaponized quantum effects, and AI systems that bordered on sentience were standard equipment on ships that had never been seen by non-human eyes. Admiral Chen's contemplation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Deep Space Monitoring Station on Titan. Commander Jackson's face appeared on the holographic display, his expression tense with concern. "Admiral, we're detecting a Krex task force moving toward the New Geneva system. 3 heavy cruisers and a battle carrier, maintaining standard patrol formation but on a direct intercept course with our outer monitoring stations." "Time to contact?" Chen asked. 18 hours at current speed. They'll reach our sensor perimeter in 12 hours. Admiral Chen considered the situation carefully. This could be the test scenario that human military planners had been preparing for. A small Krex force conducting what they believed was a routine probe of human defenses, unaware that they were about to encounter something unprecedented in galactic military history. "Signal General Morrison at Terra Defense Command," she ordered. "Inform him that we may be implementing Protocol 7 within the next 24 hours. Also, contact Commander Zhang at the Prometheus facility. I want those first-generation units ready for deployment immediately." As her staff scrambled to execute the orders, Admiral Chen reflected on the irony of the situation. The Federation species saw humans as primitive, aggressive, and predictable. They expected that any military response would follow conventional patterns, either submission or a desperate defense that could be easily overcome. What they could not comprehend was that humans had spent their entire spacefaring period preparing for exactly this scenario. Every human colony, every research station, every apparently peaceful outpost was part of an integrated defense network designed to turn any attack into a catastrophic mistake for the aggressors. The Crystallite ambassador had been correct about one thing. Striking humanity once would be the worst decision any species could make. But Thex 9 had actually underestimated the scope of human preparation. It would not take generations for humanity to become the dominant military force in the galaxy. The infrastructure was already in place. The weapons were already built. The strategies were already perfected. All that was needed was an excuse to reveal them. As the Krex task force continued its approach toward New Geneva, Admiral Chen authorized the first phase of humanity's response. Throughout human space, dormant systems activated. Concealed weapon platforms powered up. Ships that had never appeared on any Federation registry began moving toward predetermined positions. The test was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy exactly what they had been preparing for during their brief, seemingly peaceful expansion into the stars. The Krex task force dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Geneva system, with the confidence that came from 3 millennia of military dominance. Admiral Krex Vash, commanding from the battle carrier Mandible of Victory, had conducted similar reconnaissance missions hundreds of times throughout his career. The procedure was routine: appear at the edge of a system, conduct active sensor sweeps to catalog defensive capabilities, probe any military installations to test response times, and withdraw with valuable intelligence about potential future targets. Sensors detect the human monitoring station as expected, reported the ship's intelligence officer. Single orbital platform, minimal energy signature, no apparent weapon systems. Consistent with previous observations of human military technology. Admiral Krex Vash's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Standard probe pattern. Take us to within 50,000 kilometers of their station. I want detailed scans of their technology and response protocols. What the Krex Admiral did not know was that the monitoring station was actually the command center for the most sophisticated defense network ever, constructed by any species. The moment his task force had entered the system, every human facility within 100 light-years had been automatically notified. More significantly, the apparently harmless platform had begun painting his ships with targeting data from weapon systems he could not detect. On New Geneva, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with professional interest. The Krex were following predictable patterns, approaching what they believed was a defenseless human outpost with the casual arrogance that had served them well against primitive species for millennia. "Admiral," reported Commander Torres, "the Krex are conducting active sensor sweeps. Their formation suggests they're preparing for a close-range reconnaissance run." "Any communication attempts?" Chen asked. "Negative. They're maintaining communication silence, which suggests this is an unauthorized probe, rather than an official Federation action." This detail was crucial. If the Krex were operating without explicit Federation approval, humanity's response could be calibrated to send a message without triggering immediate galactic war. It would be the perfect opportunity to demonstrate human capabilities while maintaining plausible deniability. "Signal the Prometheus facility," Admiral Chen ordered. "Deploy Test Unit Alpha. I want a clean demonstration with minimal collateral damage." 50 light minutes away, in what appeared to be an empty region of space near the asteroid belt, the first Prometheus unit powered up. To external sensors, nothing appeared to happen. The unit employed exotic matter manipulation to remain effectively invisible to conventional detection methods, existing in a state of quantum superposition that made it technically both present and absent until the moment it chose to act. The Prometheus units represented the culmination of human military innovation. Each unit was roughly the size of a fighter craft, but contained technology that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Instead of traditional weapons that fired projectiles or energy beams, the Prometheus units manipulated fundamental forces directly. They could alter local gravity fields, create matter-antimatter reactions at a distance, or simply delete sections of space-time itself. Aboard the Mandible of Victory, Admiral Krex Vash was reviewing the sensor data from the human monitoring station when his ship's defensive systems suddenly screamed multiple warnings simultaneously. The tactical display showed something impossible. A contact had appeared directly between his task force and the human station, seemingly materializing from nothing. "Report," the Admiral demanded. "Unknown contact, sir." It appeared instantaneously at coordinates marking our approach vector. "Mass readings are inconsistent. Sensors cannot determine vessel configuration or energy signature." Before the Admiral could respond, the unknown contact acted. The lead Krex cruiser, Bone Render, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not disabled. It was there one moment and gone the next, leaving behind only empty space and confused sensor readings. "What happened to the Bone Render?" Admiral Krex Vash clicked frantically. "Unknown, sir. All communications have ceased. Last telemetry indicated normal operations, then nothing. No explosion, no debris field, no energy discharge. The ship is simply no longer there. The remaining Krex vessels immediately raised shields and charged weapons, but they were targeting empty space. Their sensors could detect no threat, no enemy vessel, no indication of what had eliminated an entire heavy cruiser in a matter of seconds. Admiral Chen watched the engagement through real-time sensor feeds, impressed despite herself by the Prometheus unit's performance. The exotic matter manipulation had worked flawlessly, essentially relocating the Krex cruiser to a pocket dimension, where it would remain indefinitely. The crew was alive but completely removed from normal space-time, a fate that was arguably more merciful than simple destruction. The remaining Krex vessels are attempting to withdraw, reported Commander. Torres, let them go, Admiral Chen ordered. But make sure they understand this was a measured response. Signal the Prometheus unit to demonstrate capability without elimination. The second demonstration was even more unsettling from the Krex perspective. As the remaining 3 ships attempted to flee, the mysterious attacker somehow manipulated their faster-than-light drives remotely. Instead of jumping away from the system, all 3 vessels found themselves transported to a position directly above New Geneva's North Pole, held in place by forces their engineers could not understand or counter. Admiral Krex Vash stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His task force had been effortlessly neutralized by an enemy that remained completely invisible. Their weapons could not target something they could not detect, and their escape routes had been blocked by technology that seemed to violate basic physical laws. Then, for the first time since entering the system, a human voice spoke across the communication channels. Krex vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have conducted an unprovoked military probe of a human system in violation of Federation space law. Your lead vessel has been temporarily removed from this dimensional framework as a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. The remaining ships are currently held in a stable position where you can contemplate your situation. Admiral Krex Vash had commanded military operations for over 2 centuries, but he had never encountered anything like this. The humans were speaking to him as if they were the superior force, despite being supposedly primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. Human Admiral, he responded, struggling to maintain dignity in an impossible situation. The Krex hegemony demands the immediate return of our vessel and crew. Your crew is unharmed and will be returned when appropriate, Admiral Chen replied calmly. However, I need to ensure that you understand the implications of what has occurred here. Your intelligence report suggested that humans possessed primitive military technology, equivalent to early-stage spacefaring civilizations. As you have now observed, those reports were incomplete. The understatement was staggering. The Krex Admiral had just witnessed technology that was centuries beyond anything in Federation databases. The ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to transport objects across dimensional barriers, to selectively disable faster-than-light drives. These capabilities suggested that humans had been concealing a technological advantage that dwarfed every other species in known space. What do you want? Admiral Krex Vash asked, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Accurate reporting, Admiral Chen replied. When you return to Krex space, you will provide a complete and truthful account of this encounter to your military command. You will explain that human defensive capabilities are significantly more advanced than previously believed. You will recommend that future Krex operations avoid human space entirely. And if we refuse, then you will discover that the demonstration you have witnessed represents approximately 1% of our actual defensive capabilities. The choice is yours, Admiral. As if to emphasize the point, the Prometheus unit briefly revealed itself to the Krex sensors, appearing as a sleek, impossible shape that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The sensor readings made no sense according to conventional physics, and the ship's AI systems crashed, trying to process the data. Admiral Krex Vash realized that he was no longer conducting a reconnaissance mission. He had stumbled into first contact with a species that possessed technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. The implications were terrifying, not just for the Krex hegemony but for the entire galactic order. We accept your terms, he finally managed to click through the translation matrix. Excellent, Admiral Chen replied. Your missing vessel will be returned to normal space-time in exactly 72 hours at the edge of Krex territory. Your remaining ships are free to depart immediately. I trust this has been an educational experience for all involved. As the Krex task force limped away from New Geneva, Admiral Chen turned to her staff with grim satisfaction. The test had been successful, but it also marked the end of humanity's period of peaceful expansion. Word of this encounter would spread throughout the Federation, and soon every species. The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council convened 48 hours after Admiral Krex Vash's battered task force limped back to hegemony space. The Admiral's report had spread through military command structures like wildfire, reaching the highest levels of government within hours. Species that had barely acknowledged human existence were suddenly demanding immediate intelligence briefings about humanity's true capabilities. High Counselor Vex Prime stood before the assembled delegates, his forearms manipulating holographic displays that showed the tactical recordings from the Krex encounter. The images were grainy and incomplete. Most of the Krex sensors had malfunctioned during the engagement, but they clearly showed the impossible: disappearance of the bone render and the subsequent manipulation of the remaining vessels. The Hegemony Intelligence Service has analyzed these recordings with our most advanced systems, the counselor announced to the chamber. Their conclusion is that human technology surpasses our own by a margin we cannot accurately calculate. The ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to transport objects across dimensional barriers, and to selectively disable faster-than-light drives represents a technological paradigm we do not understand. Ambassador Thex 9 remained silent in his designated position, his crystalline form pulsing with the slow, steady rhythm that indicated deep vindication among his species. Every probability matrix he had calculated was proving accurate, but he took no pleasure in being correct about such a catastrophic situation. General Krexthok's massive form bristled with agitation. The humans demonstrated their capability but also showed restraint. They could have destroyed Admiral Krex Vash's entire task force, but chose to disable and release them instead. This suggests they are not immediately hostile, merely protective of their territory. Or, interrupted Director Aqua 7 of the Aquatic Collective, it suggests they are confident enough in their superiority that they see no need for excessive violence. A predator does not kill everything it encounters, only what threatens it or what it chooses to consume. The chamber erupted in urgent discussions as delegates tried to process the implications. If humans possessed technology this advanced, their previous assessment of galactic power structures was completely wrong. The peaceful, exploration-focused civilization they had dismissed as primitive newcomers was actually the most advanced military force anyone had encountered. Ambassador Flick's core of the Merchant Coalition raised a critical question. If humans have possessed these capabilities throughout their expansion period, why reveal them now? What has changed in their strategic calculation? Because, came a new voice from the chamber's communication system, you forced our hand. Every delegate turned toward the main display as an unfamiliar figure appeared via holographic projection. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in what was clearly a human military command center, surrounded by displays showing Federation space and the positions of various fleets. I am Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force, she continued calmly. I am addressing this council to clarify certain misconceptions about human intentions and capabilities. High Counselor Vex Prime recovered from his surprise quickly. Admiral, this is a closed session of the Galactic Federation Council. Humans are not members of this body and have not been invited to participate in these proceedings. Counselor, Admiral Chen replied with what humans would recognize as a slight smile. We have been monitoring Federation communications for the past 18 months. We are aware of every military movement, every intelligence assessment, and every strategic discussion that has taken place regarding human space. Your closed session has been thoroughly compromised since before it began. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Several delegates immediately began emergency communications with their home governments, realizing that all their military secrets might already be in human hands. Furthermore, Admiral Chen continued, we are aware that several species have been developing contingency plans for preemptive strikes against human colonies. The Krex probe was simply the first overt action in what our intelligence indicates is a coordinated effort to test our defenses. General Krexthok's mandibles clicked nervously. The humans were correct. Several military alliances had been quietly discussing the possibility of eliminating the human threat before it could develop further. The fact that humans knew about these discussions suggested their intelligence capabilities were as advanced as their military technology. Admiral, Ambassador Thex-9 spoke for the first time since the session began. My species predicted this exact scenario. We warned this council that attacking humanity would unite them and reveal capabilities they had been concealing. What are your intentions now that this revelation has occurred? Admiral Chen's expression became more serious. Ambassador, your people understood something that others did not. Humans respond to existential threats by eliminating the source of those threats permanently. We do not negotiate truces or accept limited victories. When threatened with extinction, we ensure that the threat can never arise again. The holographic display around Admiral Chen shifted to show the true extent of human military infrastructure. Massive construction projects in asteroid belts throughout human space, fleets of vessels that dwarfed anything in Federation databases, and weapons platforms that seemed to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. For the past century, Admiral Chen explained, humanity has been preparing for the possibility of galactic warfare. We studied every species, analyzed every military doctrine, and developed countermeasures for every conceivable threat. What you see as recent technological advancement is actually the culmination of a century-long military research program. High Counselor Vex Prime studied the displays with growing alarm. The scale of human military preparation was staggering. They had not simply been building defenses, they had been constructing the infrastructure for galactic conquest. You speak of threats and countermeasures, the counselor said carefully, but humans have been the aggressors in this situation. Your species has expanded aggressively, established military outposts in neutral space, and developed weapons that violate several Federation treaties. Counselor, Admiral Chen replied, humanity never signed those treaties. We were never invited to participate in their negotiation. You created a galactic order that excluded us and then expected us to abide by rules we had no voice in creating. The logic was unassailable, and several delegates realized they had made a fundamental error in their approach to human expansion. By treating humans as an insignificant species unworthy of Federation membership, they had created a situation where humanity felt no obligation to respect Federation law. What do you want? Asked Ambassador Flixcore, cutting through the diplomatic posturing to address the practical reality. Simple, Admiral Chen replied. Recognition of human sovereignty over our current territory, formal representation in Federation governance proportional to our actual capabilities, and guaranteed non-interference in human expansion into unclaimed systems. And if these demands are refused? General Krexthok asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Then you will discover that the demonstration at New Geneva was merely a proof of concept. Human military doctrine is based on the principle of overwhelming response to existential threats. If the Federation chooses to treat humanity as an enemy, we will respond accordingly. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated the implications. They were facing a species that possessed overwhelming technological superiority, had been secretly monitoring their activities for months, and was now offering what amounted to an ultimatum disguised as a negotiation. Ambassador Thex-9's crystalline form pulsed with urgent light patterns. Admiral Chen, my probability calculations suggest that this confrontation was inevitable regardless of specific trigger events. However, I must ask, what assurance can you provide that human expansion will not eventually threaten other species? Admiral Chen considered the question carefully. Ambassador, humans have no interest in conquest for its own sake. We seek security, resources, and the freedom to develop according to our own cultural values. However, we will not tolerate threats to our survival or attempts to limit our growth through external force. That is not really an assurance, observed Director Aqua 7. No, Admiral Chen agreed, it is not. Because the truth is that human expansion will continue regardless of Federation approval. The only question is whether that expansion occurs through cooperation or through conflict. We prefer cooperation, but we are prepared for either scenario. High Counselor Vex Prime realized that the galactic order was fundamentally changing. The Federation had been built on the assumption that technological advancement occurred gradually, and that new species could be integrated slowly into existing power structures. Humanity had shattered that assumption by achieving technological supremacy in secret while maintaining the appearance of primitive newcomers. "We will need time to consider your proposal," the counselor said finally. "Of course," Admiral Chen replied. "You have 72 hours to reach a decision. After that time, we will assume that the Federation has chosen conflict over cooperation." Erupted in. The 72-hour deadline passed in a flurry of desperate diplomatic activity. Emergency sessions convened on every major world as species leaders grappled with the reality that their entire understanding of galactic power dynamics had been wrong. Some advocated for immediate surrender to human demands, others pushed for a coordinated military response, and a few suggested attempting to negotiate a middle ground. High Counselor Vex Prime had barely slept during the crisis period, his forearms constantly manipulating data streams as hegemony intelligence worked around the clock to assess human capabilities. The conclusions were uniformly disturbing. Long-range reconnaissance had detected massive construction projects throughout human space that dwarfed anything previously observed. More troubling, analysis of electromagnetic signatures suggested that humans had been concealing industrial capacity equivalent to the entire Federation combined. "Sir," reported Intelligence Director Zex Null, his harmonics indicating extreme concern, "our deep space monitoring stations have detected movement throughout human territory. Ships are departing from concealed positions and assuming formation patterns that suggest preparation for large-scale military operations." The counselor studied the tactical displays with growing dread. The formations were unlike anything in Federation military doctrine, suggesting that humans had developed entirely new approaches to interstellar warfare. More concerning, the number of vessels moving into position exceeded the total known human fleet by a factor of 20. "Have we received any communication from Admiral Chen?" the counselor asked. "Yes, sir." A single message transmitted to all Federation worlds simultaneously. Text only, no accompanying data. The message appeared on the main display, written in the primary language of each species, but somehow maintaining the same formal tone across all translations. "The deadline has passed without Federation response. Humanity considers this silence to be rejection of our proposals. We are now implementing defensive protocols appropriate to a state of hostilities. Any Federation vessel entering human space will be considered an act of war. Any Federation world supporting military action against human interests will be subject to retaliation. This is your final warning." High Counselor Vex Prime realized that the careful diplomatic language could not disguise what amounted to a declaration of war against the entire Federation. Humanity was essentially announcing that they considered themselves to be in a state of conflict with every major galactic power. The first indication of what defensive protocols meant came 6 hours later. The Zephyrian trade world of Velprima, which served as a major hub for commercial traffic throughout the Federation, simply stopped communicating. All subspace signals from the planet ceased simultaneously, and reconnaissance probes sent to investigate found the world intact, but completely dark. Every artificial electromagnetic emission had been silenced. "What happened to Velprima?" demanded Ambassador Tentacle Wave of the Zephyrian Collective during an emergency communication with the Federation Council. "Our best analysis suggests sophisticated electronic warfare," replied Hegemony Intelligence. "Every artificial system on the planet appears to have been disabled simultaneously, but there are no signs of physical damage or casualties. The population appears to be alive but completely cut off from technological civilization. The demonstration was perfectly calculated. Humans had shown they could disable an entire world without causing loss of life. But the implications were terrifying. If they could selectively shut down all technology on a planetary scale, no Federation world was safe from similar treatment." The second demonstration occurred 12 hours later at the Krex military installation of Mandible Station, the primary staging area for hegemony fleet operations. The massive orbital fortress, capable of servicing 1,000-ship battle groups, experienced what could only be described as selective technological failure. All weapon systems shut down, shields collapsed, and artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. But life support remained functional. General Krex Thok, who had been aboard the station during the incident, reported that human technology seemed capable of distinguishing between systems essential for survival and those used for military purposes. The attack had been precise to the point of surgical, disabling the station's combat effectiveness while leaving the crew unharmed. They are demonstrating precision, Ambassador Thex-9 observed during another emergency council session. Humans are showing that they can disable our military capabilities without resorting to mass casualties. This suggests they still prefer negotiation to destruction. Or, countered General Krexthok, they are showing us that our weapons are useless against them, while our populations remain hostage to their mercy. Both interpretations were probably correct. Human strategy appeared focused on demonstrating overwhelming technological superiority, while maintaining the moral high ground by avoiding unnecessary casualties. It was psychological warfare of the highest order, designed to break enemy morale without providing justification for desperate retaliation. The third demonstration targeted the Aquatic Collective's Deep Space Research Facility, where their most advanced scientists worked on theoretical physics projects. The humans somehow transported the entire station, a structure massing several million tons, from its position in deep space to a stable orbit around the collective's homeworld. The message was clear. If humans could move a massive research station across interstellar distances without anyone detecting the operation, they could relocate anything anywhere. They are rewriting the rules of space warfare, Admiral Fluid Motion of the Aquatic Defense Force reported to his government. Distance means nothing to them. Fortifications are irrelevant. Our entire military doctrine is based on controlling strategic locations, but they can apparently ignore spatial relationships entirely. As reports of these demonstrations spread throughout Federation space, panic began to set in among civilian populations. If humans could disable entire worlds, relocate massive installations, and penetrate any defense system, what protection could their governments possibly provide? High Counselor Vex Prime found himself facing a crisis that threatened not just Federation military supremacy, but the basic credibility of galactic civilization. Citizens were beginning to question whether their leaders had any ability to protect them from this new threat. The breaking point came when humans demonstrated their most disturbing capability. The Merchant Coalition's primary trade nexus at Commerce Station Alpha simply vanished from normal space during a routine commercial day. Millions of beings from dozens of species were conducting business when the entire structure, a city-sized orbital installation, disappeared without warning. 3 hours later, a human transmission reached every government in Federation space. Commerce Station Alpha and all inhabitants have been temporarily relocated to a secure location in dimensional space, adjacent to normal reality. They are unharmed and will be returned once Federation leadership agrees to resume negotiations. This demonstrates that human defensive capabilities extend to protecting or removing populations as necessary for strategic objectives. The implication was staggering. Humans could apparently make entire populations disappear at will, removing them from normal space-time while keeping them safe and alive. It was the ultimate strategic weapon, the ability to hold entire worlds hostage without harming anyone. Ambassador Flick's core of the Merchant Coalition was the first to break. "We cannot fight beings who can make our worlds disappear," he announced during an emergency session. "Our weapons cannot target enemies we cannot detect. Our defenses cannot protect against attacks that ignore physical laws. We must negotiate. Negotiation is surrender," General Krexthok responded angrily. "If we submit to human demands now, we accept permanent subjugation to a species that considers us inferior." "General," Ambassador Thex-9 interjected quietly, "my people's probability calculation suggests that any military response will result in the complete destruction of Federation civilization. Not conquest, destruction. Humans have been preparing for this conflict for a century. We are not facing an enemy. We are facing an extinction event." High Counselor Vex Prime realized that the Federation had two choices: accept human terms or face the possibility of technological obliteration. The comfortable assumption that superior numbers could overcome superior technology had been shattered by demonstrations that rendered conventional military thinking obsolete. "Admiral Chen," he transmitted on all frequencies, "the Federation Council formally requests resumption of negotiations. We are prepared to discuss your previous proposals." The response came within minutes. Counselor, the terms have changed. Our previous offer was made in the spirit of cooperation between equals. Your silence indicated that you do not consider humanity your equal. Our new terms reflect this reality. Humanity demands immediate Federation membership with full voting rights, recognition of exclusive human authority over a sphere of influence extending 50 light-years from Terra, and formal acknowledgement of human technological superiority in all future galactic treaties. The demands were harsh but not unreasonable given the demonstrated power imbalance. Humans were essentially demanding recognition of what had a 5 years after the Federation's acceptance of human terms, the galaxy had settled into a new equilibrium that would have been unimaginable during the crisis. The Great Restructuring, as historians were already calling it, had fundamentally altered the balance of galactic civilization without a single shot being fired in anger. Ambassador Thex-9 stood in the renovated Federation Council chamber, observing the inaugural session of the new Galactic Assembly. The chamber had been expanded to accommodate human architectural preferences, and the seating arrangement reflected the new power structure. The human delegation occupied a central position that acknowledged their role as the galaxy's dominant technological civilization. Admiral Chen, now bearing the title of Human Ambassador to the Galactic Assembly, addressed the gathered representatives with the same calm confidence she had displayed during humanity's revelation 5 years earlier. She had traded her military uniform for diplomatic robes, but everyone present understood that the military power backing her words remained unchanged. Honored delegates, Ambassador Chen began, today marks the 5th anniversary of humanity's integration into galactic civilization. I am pleased to report that this transition has proceeded more smoothly than our most optimistic projections suggested. The statistics supported her claim. Trade between human space and Federation worlds had increased by 400%. Scientific collaboration had produced breakthrough discoveries in physics, medicine, and engineering that benefited all species. Most significantly, the galaxy had experienced an unprecedented period of peace and stability. The human sphere of influence, Chen continued, now encompasses 137 systems, including 43 worlds with indigenous populations who have requested human protection. Our expansion has been conducted with full transparency and in accordance with the galactic accords we negotiated during the restructuring. High Counselor Vex Prime, whose species had adapted to their reduced status with remarkable grace, acknowledged the human achievements. The hegemony recognizes that human expansion has been conducted ethically and with appropriate consideration for existing populations. Several species have reported that human protection has enhanced their security and economic opportunities. This was true, though the reality was more complex than the diplomatic language suggested. Human protection came with certain expectations. Protected worlds were required to adopt human standards for individual rights, technological development, and interspecies relations. The result was a gradual but pervasive influence that was transforming galactic civilization according to human values. However, Vex Prime continued, some concerns have been raised about the pace of human technological advancement. Our intelligence indicates that human capabilities continue to evolve beyond what was demonstrated during the original crisis. Ambassador Chen nodded thoughtfully. Counselor, humanity has never concealed our commitment to continued technological development. We believe that advancement benefits all species through improved defensive capabilities, enhanced scientific understanding, and more efficient resource utilization. What she did not mention was that human technology had indeed evolved far beyond what the Federation had witnessed 5 years earlier. The Prometheus units that had demonstrated dimensional manipulation capabilities were now considered obsolete compared to current human systems. Humanity had developed technology that could manipulate time itself, create matter from pure energy, and establish instantaneous communication across galactic distances. Ambassador Thex-9 had been monitoring these developments through his species' probability analysis capabilities. The crystallites had been granted special status as advisors to the human government, their predictive abilities valued by a species that planned operations across centuries rather than decades. If I may, Thex-9 interjected, his harmonic voice carrying the weight of prophetic authority, the concerns about human advancement miss a fundamental point. Humanity is not developing technology for conquest. They are preparing for challenges that other species cannot yet perceive. The chamber fell silent as delegates waited for elaboration. The Crystallite ambassador's predictions had proven accurate regarding human capabilities, and his warnings were now taken seriously by every galactic government. My people's probability calculations extend beyond current galactic boundaries, Thex-9 explained. We have detected evidence of non-indigenous technological signatures from outside our local stellar cluster. Humanity's military preparations are not focused on controlling existing galactic civilization. They are preparing to defend it. The revelation sent ripples of unease through the assembled delegates. The possibility of external threats had been theoretical until now, but Crystallite predictions carried significant weight given their track record. Ambassador Chen's expression remained neutral, but those familiar with human body language could detect subtle signs of confirmation. Ambassador Thex-9's observations align with certain concerns that human deep space monitoring systems have detected. While we cannot provide specific details for security reasons, I can confirm that humanity's defensive preparations extend beyond threats from known species. General Krexthok, who had adapted to the new galactic order by becoming the Federation's primary military liaison with human forces, leaned forward with interest. Ambassador Chen, are you suggesting that external threats justify continued human military expansion? General, I am suggesting that humanity's defensive capabilities serve the interests of all galactic species, regardless of their origin. The technology that allowed us to neutralize Federation military threats can be equally effective against unknown dangers from outside our local region. The implication was both reassuring and disturbing. Humanity was positioned as the galaxy's protector against external threats, but this role also justified continued technological advancement and military expansion. Any species that challenged human authority could be portrayed as weakening galactic defenses against unknown dangers. What specific evidence supports these concerns about external threats? Asked Director Aqua 7 of the Aquatic Collective. Ambassador Chen gestured, and the chamber's holographic systems displayed long-range sensor data from the edge of human space. The images showed anomalous energy signatures and structural patterns that did not match any known galactic technology. These readings were detected by our deep space monitoring network 6 months ago, Chen explained. Analysis suggests artificial constructs of unknown origin, moving through intergalactic space toward our stellar cluster. Estimated arrival time is between 50 and 100 years, depending on their propulsion capabilities. The data was sobering. Whatever was approaching the galaxy possessed technology that could cross the vast emptiness between stellar clusters, suggesting capabilities that might exceed even human advancement. The Federation had spent 5 years adjusting to human technological supremacy, only to learn that humanity itself might face challenges from an even more advanced civilization. What preparations are being made? Asked Ambassador Flixcore. His species. Commercial instincts already calculating the economic implications of galactic-scale military preparation. Humanity is expanding our defensive infrastructure to cover the entire galactic region, Ambassador Chen replied. This includes the construction of monitoring stations throughout previously unoccupied systems, the development of defensive platforms capable of engaging threats at interstellar ranges, and the establishment of emergency evacuation protocols for vulnerable populations. The scope of the preparations was staggering. Humanity was essentially claiming responsibility for defending the entire galaxy, a role that required resources and authority on an unprecedented scale. Federation species found themselves in the position of supporting human expansion, not because they wanted to, but because the alternative might be facing unknown threats without adequate protection. The new Galactic Assembly hereby authorizes human defensive expansion into unoccupied systems deemed necessary for galactic security, High Counselor Vex Prime announced after a brief consultation with other senior delegates. The Federation commits full support to humanity's protective efforts. As the session concluded, Ambassador Thex-9 reflected on the elegant inevitability of the situation. Humanity had achieved exactly what they had always intended: complete freedom to expand and develop according to their own priorities, with the support and resources of the entire galaxy. They had transformed from an ignored minor species to the acknowledged, protectors of galactic civilization in less than a decade. The Crystallite ambassador's probability calculations suggested that the external threat was real but manageable, given human technological capabilities. More interesting was the probability that humanity had been aware of this threat from the beginning of their expansion period. Their entire strategy, the concealed military development, the psychological warfare, the careful demonstration of overwhelming superiority, had been designed not just to achieve galactic dominance, but to position themselves as indispensable protectors against dangers that other species could not even detect.